everybody. Welcome to In This Corner, the podcast. A buck 73. I got it right. See that?
Yes, you did.
A buck 73. Boxing's biggest names, boxing's biggest stories, biggest fights, greatest memories and moments. Boy, that guy there, Lee Groves, does a great job with those memories and moments. He's a historian, a writer, an author, a CompuBox counter. And he's a mathematician that says no, 173, not 4. So inside stuff going on In This Corner, the podcast. But, wow, we've had some really great guests recently. Steve Albert a few weeks ago, Tom Hauser last week, the great writer and author. And got another this guy we got coming on with us, I would describe him as a Swiss Army knife.
Very much so. And that's because of his versatility. He is a trainer. He is a cut man. He was a broadcaster. He's a glove manufacturer, businessman. He has pretty much done just about everything that you could be. He was an amateur trainer. He's a professional trainer. Russ Anber of Canada. He's Mr. Everything in boxing, and it's really great that we're going to have him on our show this week.
But before we do that, we've got stuff to get to. There was a pretty good scrap across the pond with some big guys, and so I'll just let you take us into our first segment to talk about Wardley and Parker.
Yeah, there was a lot on the line. Parker is he came into the fight as the WBO's interim heavyweight champion, and he was in prime position to have next against Oleksandr Usyk if he got past Fabio Wardley. Well, apparently he didn't get past Fabio Wardley because he was TKO'd, but the manner in which the fight ended caused a firestorm online and caused debate. A lot of people said that, Howard Foster moved in a little early, and others said that they were okay with the stoppage, and that includes Parker himself. So after having looked at the stoppage, what does Smitty and his eyes think of the stoppage?
I mean, would I have liked it to go a tad longer? On this one, I would say yes, because as all the so-called experts pointed out that some of the shots were missing, that Wardley was throwing, Parker was slipping some of them and things of that nature. But it wasn't egregious, in my opinion. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't horrendous. It was a tad early. And I think this ref has been known and prone to do that before, which probably really caused all the issues that he had been predisposed to do that, the quick stoppages. But I think everybody should hold their horses. This isn't like a young guy early in his career or in his first big fight and he gets stopped, never get a shot again because, whatever. This is heavyweight boxing, and it's Joseph Parker. In heavyweight boxing, the fighters have beyond 9 lives. And so if anything, not being spread out all over the canvas, having there been some controversy and the fact that most everybody had Parker ahead, will get him another shot if in fact he'll want one, and I'm sure he will. So I see it a different way. These eyes tell me history. It's heavyweight boxing. He's going to get another shot and maybe another shot. But had he got flattened, maybe then he wouldn't get the shot. So I don't see it as being again horrendous or egregious. It was just a tad short. What do you think?
That's exactly how I would phrase it. It was a tad too early. Seconds before the fight was stopped, Parker did throw some punches back, and Wardley appeared to be losing some steam. He was getting wild. He was inaccurate. And for those reasons, I probably would have liked to have seen it go a little bit longer, just to see if that dynamic would continue. I've seen much worse stoppages in my time in
Yeah.
boxing. We could probably go through several dozen off the top of our head. And, Howard Foster, another point of contention is that Howard Foster is a British referee benefiting a British fighter. And that you could throw that into the mix. But I think Joseph Parker, the way he reacted in the post-fight interview, he was very sportsmanlike. He gave deference to Foster. He congratulated Wardley, and yeah, he did say, I would have liked to have gone a little bit longer, but he didn't make a big stink out of the whole thing, and that I think took some of the edge off of it. If Parker's okay with it, then perhaps we should be okay with it.
Yeah. Yep. And what does that victory mean for Wardley?
It opened the world for him, and the world in particular is Oleksandr Usyk and a chance at the undisputed heavyweight championship. Parker previously held that spot, and now Wardley has inherited it. As far as Parker is concerned, he must go back to the drawing board. He says he wants a rematch, and the controversy over the stoppage could get him one if Wardley and his team are unable to nail down the Usyk fight. Should Parker continue, or should he exit stage left?
He's a guy, and I've done so many interviews about him on New Zealand radio. I think he's been an overachiever. He's a guy who's accomplished, I think, so much more than some people thought he would. He's been an excellent fighter. He's won world titles. How many times has he won the heavyweight title? Once or twice?
I think if you count interim titles, twice.
Yeah.
I think he won the full WBO once.
And he's made some money, and he hasn't been beaten up badly. Where I go these days, I go towards safety and taking care of yourself because of the money that that he's made. He's had some big fights. I would assume, I don't have a problem with him fighting again, seeing what he has. If I were him, I would try to keep the weight, maybe a little lighter than where it was so he can use some of that dexterity and mobility that we've seen from him in the past. But now he does, live on to fight another day, and I think he will, in fact, fight another day. Not about stoppages, but later on in the program, after we're finished, if we've concluded with the interview with Russ, I know that you got some cool stuff you're going to talk about towards the end of the show, right?
Yeah, last weekend I went to a judges clinic that was conducted by Steve Weisfeld, who is considered by many the best judge in the world right now. And I learned a lot, and I'll discuss what I learned later on in the show.
All right. Let's take a break and come back with Russ Anber. Boxing's Mr. Everything. Done it all. Been there, done that. Russ Anber, right after this.
I got two options. Option one, I can accept defeat. Option two, I can get up. I can get tougher. I can get faster. I can get stronger. And then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
Back in this corner, the podcast, boxing's biggest names, boxing's biggest stories, boxing's biggest fights, greatest memories and moments. We do it all. There's Lee Groves, and I mentioned Lee. The best way for me to describe this gentleman is he's like a Swiss Army knife. Where you talk about versatility when it comes to boxing. Corner man, cut man, glove manufacturer, television, commentary, had his own show. Russ Anber joins us. How you doing, Russ?
I'm good. Here, I'll put up my little font here. You see my own. Listen to this. I went out and bought like a box full of portable, disposable cups so I can have my coffee on the way in. After I bought like 100 of them, somebody gave me this as a gift. Now I've got 100. I've got 100 disposable cups for sale if anybody wants them. So if you need them for travel, let me know. How are you guys?
We're well. We think about Lee, the last few weeks, Steve Albert a few weeks ago, Tom Hauser last week, and then Russ Anber. We tend to like to follow the guys that really have made their mark in boxing, and not only has Russ made it, he continues to make it. But with that, I always do this. I want to take you back, and you take us back. When did the Russ Anber pugilistic journey begin? Tell us.
Wow. Okay, so clearly you guys are not going to go out and buy the book, and you want all this.
Oh,
in the audio
we're gonna do that. You're gonna tease it.
We're going to tease it.
Well, look, I mean, I fell in love with boxing when I was 15 years old. That's the culmination probably of, I think, the Summer Olympics in '76, which happened to be here in Montreal, and then watching the great U.S. team, and to this day, I think the best team that the USA has ever fielded. A dream matchup would be 76 against 84. And me and Buddy McGirt often argue about that stuff. But that's where I sort of first really fell in love with the sport. My first contact with the sport, however, was just before I turned 10 years old, leading up to the Muhammad Ali-Joe Frazier fight in 1971. That was the big thing that transcended sport, really. And as a young kid who's following all kinds of different sports and a sports fanatic, you couldn't help but, ask who's going to win, right? And so all our friends in the neighborhood, everyone's picking one or the other. And I asked my dad, I said, "Dad, who's going to win between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier?" And he said, "Doesn't matter." He said, "Joe Louis would have beat both of them." So, that was my first connection with boxing, right? Because I was his hero. But 76 Olympic team, the movie Rocky coming out in November, and then me meeting my my chemistry teacher, who I found out loved boxing, and he became my first trainer and trained me throughout my last year in high school. And my career, though, I mean, forget my amateur boxing, nothing to brag about. I'm proud that I did it, and I fulfilled, a desire to want to do that. But I'm proudest most of starting my professional career and my training career at the age of 18 years old, which I look back on it and think that must be crazy. People must have looked at me and thought, this guy can't be serious, but that's where I started. So officially, I like the 1979 is the date. Sorry, Smitty.
You mentioned that you boxed amateur. I kind of wish I had. I went right to the pros, which is why I didn't last too many years. But for me, with everything I've done in boxing up until this day, that those 4 years at the Fifth Street Gym and training made a hell of a difference with my eyes and everything else. How important, though, was the fact that you actually did it? Is that something you feel was important to what you've become? The fact that you actually know what it's like to make that walk and to go inside that squared circle?
You know what? It's not so much knowing what it's like. It's the same thing in my other pursuits of sports. Like I thought, up until I was 15, 16, I thought my career was going to be a professional baseball player. Like I was certain I was going to play professional ball, right? Like there was no doubt I loved baseball. Baseball was my first love.
By the way, Toronto could have used you last night in the Toronto needed Russ Anber last night.
You have no idea how hard it is to be cheering for Toronto when I'm a Montreal Expos fan.
I know.
Right. Yeah. So, but I think what it did, and athletes get a gift sometimes, gift of speed, power, ability, whatever it is in whatever sport they're in. I got a gift. The God-given gift I had was analyzing. Why do things work the way they were in any sport? And I really think that I could have had a career coaching any sport, baseball, hockey, boxing, because I kind of realized what I could give to somebody that I didn't have myself. I think that's what made me probably a better coach. Yes, knowing what it's like, of course, there's a difference, but knowing what I was missing and able to recognize that in fighters when they had it or what I could give to them, I think that's probably a more important role that I didn't have those things that I saw my friends have. And I knew that if I had that, this is what I would want to do. So I was able to, be able to tell people what they could do and how they could make it better. And I think I would have had just as much success in other sports, but boxing ended up being my calling. And it was easy for me to teach. And even older people at the time, older than me, listened to what I had to say because of my ways, I guess, of communicating it or breaking it down that they could understand it. So I'd like to think that that still stands true today, even as a cut man. When I sit in the corner and I sit down on the stool when the bell rings, I don't sit down as a cut man. I sit down as a trainer. And I'm talking to the other trainer, Buddy and me and Joe McNally. We have good conversations in the corner. I'm another set of eyes as a coach. The fact that I can do cuts is a bonus. But back in my day, that's what trainers did. They did cuts. That was part of your job of being a trainer. It wasn't a specific, task in the corner. So I sit down as a coach and I look and I see things and I can yell encouragement and I can give advice because I'm looking at it from a coach's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Lee?
Well, your ability to analyze was also expressed in your broadcasting career. Now, you said you began in 1980 at the 1988 Olympics, but the first time that I saw you was when CBC Sports aired the Commonwealth Games trials for Team Canada. You were one of the commentators, and in fact, as I'm speaking about this, there's a little video of you doing the stand-up for that broadcast. One of the fights that we saw was Dale Brown winning a 3-round decision over Troy Amos Ross, two of the bigger names on the Canadian amateur scene at the time. Tell us about those days when you were working with the amateurs and doing TV commentary.
Well, listen, for me, Lee, it was so important as a trainer that I wanted to develop fighters. I didn't just want to work with guys that were already made, that were already coming off great careers, and then you pop up into the corner and you work with them. I wanted to develop fighters. Like, I truly held a lot of respect for Emmanuel Stewart,
yes,
and more importantly, my mentor, which was John Davenport. I don't know if either of you knew John Davenport, but John was my mentor, and he was from the Second Street Youth Center. He ran the Second Street Youth Center in New Jersey, and he was the first guy to really give me a chance as a coach on the American scene. So I wanted to do that. And so I was involved from amateurs right from almost day one of developing fighters. And my involvement went right to the presidency of Quebec Amateur Boxing and board member of Boxing Canada. I've done 6 Olympic Games as a commentator and a broadcaster. I've had 4 athletes go to Olympic Games. One in Seoul, 3 in Atlanta. So I was heavily involved in amateur boxing and developing the talent that I had. So that was important for me. I think that was a great breeding ground. And in '88, when I started, doing my broadcasting career, was almost, it was an accident, an act of God that happened, because we were over in Korea 2 weeks before the game started, waiting for our association to get us our credentials to go to the fights. When the Olympic Games started, a bunch of coaches, we were all in the same position. We paid our way over there, wanted to be with our fighters, never got the accreditation. So on day one, we all bought a ticket to the event, and we were calling a press conference with all the media that we knew to denounce the Canadian Olympic Association because they wouldn't give us our credentials, right? And we'd been there for 2 weeks and all. As a result, I met the guy from CBC who I'd known. I said, "Hey, Doug, what's happening? Who's doing color commentary for you?" And he says, "Well, we're taking a different member from the team each day." I said, "Well, nobody knows this team better than me. I've been with them the last year, traveling the world with them." He said, "Okay, you can do it tomorrow." And I did. They liked what I did, and they gave me a job for the rest of the games. And I always say I started at the top, and I've been working my way down ever since. So that's how it started. I did 6 Olympic Games, and at that time, CBC was boxing was so popular. We did Canadian championships, we did the box offs, we did the Commonwealth Games. We did the major tournaments, Pan Am Games. We did all these fights. So that was good. It was a great learning ground for me. And I got to travel the world, met friends all over the world, and stayed part of the amateur boxing scene for years.
And another aspect of your TV experience was a weekly TV show that aired on Canada's TSN channel, and it had a very familiar name, In This Corner.
Yeah.
What are your memories of that show, and how long did it run?
Well, okay, the memories of that show are still probably, that's the pinnacle, I think, of my broadcasting career. That was something I really enjoyed doing. I came up with that name talking to the guy, the president of TSN at that time. I was walking around my house on the phone when they offered me the job, and I came up with that name, only to discover later that Smitty was using the same name for his show. So not knowing at all, this was before social media or knowing anything about this. And what happened was, it was after the Olympic Games in Greece, and somebody from, I believe it was either the Toronto Sun, I think it was Toronto Star, wrote an article about the CBC's coverage of the games. And, they would talk about some of the different commentators. And they said the tandem of Russ Anber and Bruce Rainey at Boxing Venue has been fantastic, blah, 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 blah. This guy should have his own show. And as a result of that, TSN reached out to me, who I had done work with them as well in past Olympics, when they used to partner up with CBC, and they would air some of the things and CBC would air some, split broadcast. Mm-hmm. And so they offered me the chance to do it. And the reason obviously I'd like to think that they offered it because of the good reviews I got, but it really was to showcase the HBO content that TSN had the rights to. So the show was meant to recap the fights you had just seen that weekend on TSN, on HBO, and then TSN had the 1 week broadcast delay showing it the next weekend. So we would recap the fight and then say, hey, you'll get to see all this Saturday on TSN. You'll get to see, because nobody had HBO. You couldn't have private, pirated boxes that you could watch this, right? So the show was done to get the viewers to watch the TSN's broadcast of the HBO fights. And then it lasted 3 years. And then the HBO contract went out. HBO came directly into Canada themselves. TSN got moved out and got a 1 month delay when they could show it. So when that HBO series ended, that's when they kind of said, well, we don't need a boxing program anymore. But for 3 years, man, it was a lot of fun. It was really, Dan Rayfield was on the show a few times with us, and it was really good times. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, not only are you a trainer, cut man, and TV commentator, you're also a businessman. Specifically, you are the founder and CEO of Rival Boxing, hence the shirt that you are wearing. It came to be in 2003 with the promise of reinventing the industry by offering high-end equipment. What prompted you to create the company?
Well, first of all, let me correct one thing. I'm not a businessman. I am absolutely not a businessman at all. If I was, we might even be more successful than we are. So I'm a boxing guy trying to infiltrate the business world. So we're doing, me was making equipment. I've been selling boxing equipment since I opened my gym in '83. I started for 13 years. I was the exclusive distributor for Ringside equipment in Canada. When John Brown started his company, I became the Canadian distributor. And then out of nowhere, after doing it for 13 years, they just basically cut me off with a fax, said, we don't need you anymore. We're going to sell directly into Canada. Mm-hmm. So that kind of cut the legs out from under me a little bit. Lost my job in selling ringside equipment. But I always had the idea of wanting to develop my own stuff. One day I'm at my office and I get a visit from a gentleman who was visiting Montreal. He was in the leather business, primarily dealing with motorcycle wear, and went to see some motorcycle people. And they asked him, does he know anybody who's in the boxing business? Because he had just started a part of his factory making boxing equipment. So the only name they knew was Russ Anber. Go see Russ Anber. So he found me and came to see me. I told him that at the time I'm selling boxing equipment for Title Boxing, who are still my friends to this day, Dave Hansen and Tony. I've known them for more than 30 years now. So he came to see me, and I told him of my ideas of what I would like to do with rival boxing. And he said, well, we can help you with that. I said, okay, what's your minimum order? He said, one container. That's all, just one container. I said, Mr. Tariq, I'm sorry, but I said, I've only got $2,000 to my name. I can't afford to buy a container. I said, but thank you very much for stopping by. We shook hands and he left. And the next day he came, I got a call from downstairs and they said, Russ, Mr. Tariq is downstairs. He wants to see you. I said, okay, send him up. And he comes up and he says, oh, Mr. Russ, I don't sleep last night. I said, why? What happened, Mr. Tariq? He said, I was thinking about what you said about Rival and what you want to do. He says, I think Rival could be very successful. Forget about the minimum order. You tell me with whatever you have, we'll make it work with you. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, if you do that, I promise you every order after that will be for more. Maybe only $1 more, but it'll be for more. He said, it's okay, Russ, no problem. And that's how Rival Boxing got started. Wow. And he was the first guy to make stuff for me, and we went from there.
So I looked at the website, and it said that the gloves and the other items are made from a boxing specific perspective and offered innovative designs and technologies. So what separated your equipment from all the other equipment?
It's a great question. Brilliant. I'm glad you asked that, because this leads me to what I wanted to say all along, and it's something that I believe in greatly. Other boxing equipment companies are businessmen trying to infiltrate the boxing world. I'm a boxing guy trying to infiltrate the business world.
Okay.
And for me, it was about making equipment that my fighters could use. And when I say my fighters, I'm not talking about a fitness class, because I've never done a fitness boxing class in my life. I'm talking about my fighters, top flight amateurs, top flight pros can use that equipment. There was no sense in creating Rival just to make an entry-level glove that I could buy for $10 and sell for $40 and make money doing that. And my pros were going to use other brands. I had to make a brand and a equipment that my fighters could use that was going to be superior, or at least as good as the best brands out there and the best that the brands have to offer. And that's what we did. We started out with 5 items, and all those 5 items were professional quality items that any pro could wear in training, no problem. And we made that, and that's how we started the business. So I was really focused on making sure that if I was a boxing guy with the reputation I had to make a product that was going to be worthy of the fighters I'm training and what we're using in the gym. And that's what drove me to create Rival and do it with the innovations and the things that I liked in the gym. The first glove I ever made, a sparring glove, which is still available today, I designed the lacing system based on how I tied gloves in the gym. So, the way I tie gloves, I said, you know what? I'm going to make a glove that's going to accommodate the way I tie it. And it's been our trademark. The angled cuff on Rival gloves is the exact way that I used to lace gloves on a fighter's hands. And we made a glove to ergonomically fit that, so your hand doesn't move in a glove by tying the laces this way and allowing it to move. You tie it at an angle, and that's what keeps it in place. So those are the kind of things we did.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You know what? That's good stuff. Just before we go to the break, though, what would be, and you kind of just explained it, but whether it be Title gloves, Everlast gloves, Reyes gloves, what's his name's company?
Grant.
Elvis. What Grant? What would be, in your opinion, the major difference between your glove and the gloves I just mentioned, as to how it would work better or be better for a fighter?
Well, in the gloves that you've mentioned, Elvis makes a great glove. I can't deny that he makes a very good. I'd be ignorant to say no, it's not good, or mine is better. That's not true. It's a different construction. He makes a good glove, but he focuses primarily on the fight gloves, not on necessarily all the training equipment. He does make some, but certainly not to the degree that we trying to get stuff into gyms. So he makes a great glove, but different. Reyes makes a great fight glove. They met some of their similarities in their glove you can find in ours or in Everlast, because there's a way you have to make a glove. I think the difference really is, and when you're talking about the high end, everybody makes a good glove. Winning's glove is fantastic. Reyes is our exit. They're all good. All the high-end brands are good. And I'm proud to be part of that company. And we just try to do things where we get a little better, what we feel is a better fit, you know, a nicer design, a more ergonomic look, maybe different colors. So it really, even within our own company, when we make gloves, let's say, for example, punch mitts, we might have the largest selection of punch mitts on the market. Why? Because it's such a personal thing as to what the coaches like to wear. And that's the same thing for gloves or headgears. You have a lot of them because everybody is more comfortable in something else, not necessarily two people like the same thing. So I like to think that we incorporate as much of the different needs or demands of the customer into as many products as we can. And I think we do that, you know, maybe better than everybody else. You know, our selection might be bigger and we focus a lot on the high end. You got to remember something as well, Smitty, that, you know, as a Canadian company trying to infiltrate a U.S. and Latino-dominated American market space as a Canadian company, I wasn't making hockey equipment here, you know? I'm making boxing equipment. And to get into that industry with no money had to be because the product was good and the people liked it. And the old-fashioned marketing of word of mouth where people said, yeah, I like this glove. Hey, this is a good glove. Yeah, it fits good. I like it. That's what made my company. So I'm pretty proud of the fact that we were able to do it.
And I've used them and heard nothing. You know, in fact, you know what, Lee? Remember what we were talking about? I think I got 15 more in-rings left in me. Remember we were just talking about this, Lee? Mm-hmm. And when you know, on my television show, you're probably aware I do an in-ring segment where I get in the ring with the fighters, and I think I should wear rival gloves for my last 15 of my career. If Russ can come up with something for these older hands, that might be something interesting. And we're going to take a break. Ponder that. We'll be back. Back in this corner, the podcast, Lee Grove, special guest, Russ Anber. And by the way, Lee, again, final segment, tell the folks what you're going to be doing. You just come off a seminar.
Yeah, I went to a judging seminar conducted by Steve Weisfeld, probably the best in the business, and just wanted to tell what I learned and the changes that have been made in the judging world, so on and so forth.
All right. Keep
me
rolling.
And you can argue about that. I'm sure we can find plenty of arguments in that, Lee. Oh man, yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, one of the things that we'll bring it up. I'm a big believer, and when I'm hosting the Hall of Fame every year, we always on Saturdays the day before the final induction, we always have referees, and last year we did judges, and I'm a big. You know, I'm a big believer in ring generalship means a lot, and they're kind of sort of trying to undo and get away from ring generalship. But I'm a guy that really believes that ring generalship can set up everything else, and so that's one of the things that Lee's going to be talking about that I'm going to disagree with. I think the direction that they're going.
I want in on this argument, boys. I want in on this one. This is good.
Well, do you think ring generalship is important?
Absolutely. I think ring generalship is important. I think one of the mistakes that has happened, and maybe this plays to what you said earlier, Smitty, about me, you know, knowing what it takes to get into a ring. I think that judges, and one of the best examples I ever use, and maybe Lee, I don't know if you'll agree with me or not on this, but I always thought that Juan Manuel Marquez was too good of a fighter and had too much subtleties in the art of boxing for the people judging him to recognize. And that's why he was on the wrong end of a bunch of decisions.
Against Pacquiao.
Name who you want, but that's, I just feel that that's so important, is knowing that and how he does it in the ring, that he could make you miss him by this much. Like, this is as close as the punch, and the judges think it landed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so important. I'm an amateur magician. You may know I do magic tricks and stuff, and only a magician can appreciate the subtleties of what you do and understand what you do that the layman cannot. You can't ask a layman, how do you do the magic trick? You've got to ask the magician, and he'll tell you. And that's something I always feel is wrong in boxing, is sometimes the fighters are just too talented, too skilled. Prime example was this weekend with Fabio Wardley and Joseph Parker, a bad stoppage, against a guy who's showing the art of boxing. He just got hurt, and he's dipping, diving, rolling, blocking, catching stuff, using the ropes, bouncing back off them. And the referee jumped in after 3 punches did not land and stopped the fight. And that's about understanding the subtlety.
That's why I did, I've been in the ring with 65 world champions on the show, and the subtleties, the guile is the thing. The craft is what I love so much. But before I throw it back to Lee, if you could do me with your magic and disappearing, if you could make Jake Paul disappear, I would really appreciate that as we toss it to Lee Groves. Go ahead, Lee.
Oh, my goodness. Well, over the past few weeks, we have played a game with our guests, sort of called the name game. I can give you a name and offer short thoughts about what comes to mind when I say a certain name. And the first is David Lemieux.
David Lemieux, I had since the age of 9 years old. And when David started with me, he really was a coach's dream. And as a kid, he came to me at 9. By the time he was 12 years old, he had a key to the gym. He would get there early. He'd open up the gym. He was just a pleasure to deal with. And he was a real workaholic. He was not naturally gifted. I'll give you, he carried natural power, but that only came later. As a kid, when he started out, he didn't have that. And it took a long time to get him to understand. And we used to make a joke in the gym about David when he was a kid, that if you taught him something in January, you hope by June he had an idea what you're talking about, He really had to learn his craft. This didn't come easy to him. And he was a really, really hard worker. And I traveled the world with David. He lost his first 4 amateur fights, but never quit. Kept coming back to the gym. When he was 15, you might have seen he did those title boxing videos with me. I did some title training videos. You can still see them online. And I often ask people, hey, you know who that is? No, who's that? That's David Lemieux when he was 15 years old. And then he turned pro. And then something happened. Something, starting the thing which, you try to tell fighters about. They started reading believing their own hype, believing their own press clippings. And he found boxing in the pro ranks to probably be easier than it was in the amateur ranks. Because in the amateur ranks, you're going to tournaments, you're always having to fight the best guys that are there, whether it's on the provincial level, national level, or international level. These are the best guys that travel. Pro ranks, your promoters are bringing guys in. David walks out there, boom, down, boom, down. He said, this is easy. I just got to hit these guys. And we started to have our problems. And he started to become a star, a certain celebrity in Quebec, where he was knocking everybody out and the fans were just loving him. And social media was, of course, blowing up during that time. So, he became almost an overnight sensation as an 18-year-old. And I still bug Yvon Michel about this to this day. He did when we did the press conference, he called David Lemieux the Sidney Crosby of boxing. And I just said, what are you doing? How are you comparing this to Sidney Crosby? And not because I didn't think David had the abilities, but I know what it takes. You're only 18, 19 years old. We've got a whole time ahead. And my plan was to move David along, that he wouldn't fight for a world title until he had about 40 professional fights, which after we had our argument, that ended up happening, because by the time he won the world title against Ndam, he was probably close to mid-30 fights when he won that title. So my prediction when he was 18 wasn't too far off. But he just started, not listening. I guess, he thought there's nothing I could say anymore to him. I kind of lost his his trust, if you will.
Is he Lebanese like Smitty? Is he part Lebanese?
He is part Lebanese, part Armenian, part Quebecois.
Yeah, see that's the Lebanese stubbornness that we have in us. Because I'm Irish and Lebanese, which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is the most dangerous combination known to man. Keep going, Lee.
Well, I'm Lebanese as well. So
well, good. Then we need to get together and have some hummus and some kibbeh. I didn't know you were Lebanese.
No problem. We'll bring Lee with it. But
sorry, Lee, I messed up your name association. Keep going.
Well,
yeah, I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, I'm not Lebanese, so I can't join you all.
You can be a wannabe. You can eat with us. That's okay.
An honorary, you might say.
Break bread with us.
Yeah.
So Lemieux, we just had our falling out, and before it got worse, I just decided, leading up to the Rubio fight was a bad fight. I didn't want it. I told the promoter I didn't want it. Took it anyways. David batters Rubio for 3 rounds. I mean, batters him and doesn't get him out of there. And now Rubio, the veteran, starts to come back. And I knew this was going to happen. I knew David only had that explosive. And when he was explosive, when he was on, there wasn't a lot of guys that could have beat him, okay? Then Rubio got him. And I stepped in and stopped that fight. Teddy Atlas criticized me for stopping that fight. But I think I saved David's career. I saved David's career that night. And he went on to become world champion. But we had to part ways. I just had to say, you know what? This is not working anymore. You're just making me crazy that you're not listening. And you obviously don't want to listen to me. So it's cool. And we just parted ways.
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And I see 3 posters behind you. I see Amanda Serrano. I see Janibek Alimkhanuly and Artur Beterbiev. What are your thoughts on those 3?
Listen, I think Amanda, I think her and Katie Taylor really transcended women's boxing. I think that it's safe to say that without being insulting in any way, both of them fight like men. And watching them fight is like watching, 2 small weight men go at it. Okay, they might not possess the power that the men do, but technique, intensity, skill set is right up there with the best. And I think you have to say that. And Janibek, I don't know how this guy who is, a unified world champion, absolutely nobody wants to fight him, and he blitzes guys that he fights, doesn't get the recognition or the respect that he deserves. The only people who respect him are other fighters who don't want to fight him. They respect him. They know what they're got. But he is. I don't know why this guy isn't more of a fixture. I think he has all the stuff to be exactly like what Golovkin was. And yeah, I think he's just so talented. He can write his ticket, and I think he can be a 2-weight world champion. I think he can win at super middle at some point. He's a really talented fighter, good puncher as well.
There was talk briefly about Terrence Crawford after he beat Canelo to become a 3-division champion, dropping down to middleweight, and if Janibek could unite the titles, maybe Crawford and Janibek could fight. What are your thoughts about that?
It's not Janibek you have to worry about. It's the other guys who have the other titles that have to get them to Janibek. That's the problem. It's not Janibek. Janibek would fight Terrence Crawford tomorrow. I'm not saying that in a disrespectful manner because I know how Crawford is, but I'm saying Janibek would take the fight, but I know that Crawford wants to have all 4 in one shot, right? Which, makes sense for him as well. But, the fact that these guys won't fight Janibek, there's no money behind them to offer it to these opponents, to say, okay, this is how much we're giving you. You got to bring your title in and you fight Janibek.
And by the way, everybody knows, because I was probably the first guy in the business that told everybody how good Crawford was going to be. Janibek would be a more difficult fight for Crawford than the redhead we just saw fighting Crawford, in my opinion. Lee, why don't you ask about those last 2 names that you had on your list, though?
Yes, Vasiliy Lomachenko and Oleksandr Usyk. Your thoughts on them?
Look, there's no words to describe how lucky I am to have had the chance to be with them for pretty much their entire career, to take part in their training camps, to be part of the glory that they lived and the greatness that they achieved in the sport. I feel very bad for Lomachenko, who I thought was dealt a raw deal, you know, in the negativity put out towards him, almost the jealousy towards him, the robbery against Devin Haney, which I still contend to this day is a robbery. Also, maybe the only guy that's going to go into the Hall of Fame who lost 3 fights in championship fights and never got a rematch in either one. How does that happen? Guys get blitzed out in 1 round and get a rematch. You know, I don't understand. But this guy never got a rematch. I thought that was very, very unfair of the way they treated him. And I don't think we got to see truly how great Lomachenko could have become and how much more nights of boxing he could have brought us had he been given that opportunity. It always seemed like from the very time he started, everything was stacked against him to make up, to try to stop him from succeeding. Oh, you beat everybody at wet featherweight, move up to junior lightweight. Oh, you beat everybody, move up to lightweight. And then they want to move to 140. You know what I mean? They keep putting bigger guys on him, you know, to try to make it an even playing field instead of him saying, oh, I'm good where I am. You know, no one wants to see it then. Not interested.
Well, sometimes sometimes you're too good for your own damn good. And that's what he was. Too good for his own damn good. And then I'll lead you into another guy who's pretty damn good, and that's Usyk.
You know what? I did an article for Boxing News recently about how Usyk fares against the greatest heavyweights of all time. And there were only 3 names that came to mind that I would make, or that the bookies would make, a slight betting favorite over Usyk. And I'll throw it back out to you guys now. I'll pretend I'm the interviewer now. I'll throw it back. Who were my 3 guys?
Muhammad Ali, Larry Holmes, Lennox Lewis. I don't know. That's
it. That's crazy. Did I tell you this already, or did you must have seen an interview I did?
I never saw it. I just my sagation, perspication, and sapience. We have this in this corner thing going on. So
yeah, maybe.
But no, those would be those. Is that right? Is that the ones?
Those are the 3 that I said. I think Larry Holmes is one of the most underrated champions in history, if not arguably the greatest champion in history. I think on any given night, he beats anybody. Now, that's not to say that George Foreman wouldn't have clunked someone and they go, but, you know, we saw that Foreman could have had difficulties, you know, with movers and boxers and stuff. And, you know, you never know in any fight. Tyson, the same thing. But those 3 guys were dangerous in so many different ways. You know, Lennox was, if Usyk had a difficult time with Fury, which they were competitive fights, even though I thought Usyk controlled both those matchups, no problem, contrary to what Tyson Fury says, Lennox was even better than Fury. So I think that would have made it, you know, more difficult for him. And he could punch, and, you know, he had good skills. And remember something about Lennox as compared to others, he started boxing before he became a heavyweight. So he learned all those subtleties and all that little slick stuff. He learned that before he grew into it. And then when he became the giant he was still able to do that. So that could have been a problem for Usyk. And of course, well, Ali, even if you don't believe it, it would just be sacrilegious to say otherwise.
Yeah. Right? Hey, Beterbiev, the power of Beterbiev, I always talk about, and I know, and you're probably a great teacher of it, of technique can certainly lend to power. But I believe when you punch like Beterbiev, this thing we say that we never can really explain, heavy hands, gosh, does he have it? Is it like I think somewhat of a born thing?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. There's another guy I'll give you that same example about is Adonis Stevenson. And I trained Adonis for over 2 years as an amateur, and brought him from, he was number 2 in Quebec to number 1 in North America and a silver medalist at the Commonwealth Games. So Adonis Stevenson, just to go on what you're saying, Smitty, he could hit you wrong with his left hand. He could kind of hit you awkward and it would hurt. And that's where you get that undescribable natural power. And one thing I saw with Adonis Stevenson, and I mean, obviously, Beterbiev falls into that same category. Beterbiev may be more in both hands. overall better with both hands, but Adonis with that left hand was
Lethal.
debilitating. And the reason I say that is I've seen him hit guys, boom, with a shot where they actually freeze for a second and you think, okay, maybe that didn't hurt him. But not only did it hurt them, it hurt so much that the brain was trying to compute how hard it just got hit before it realizes what it's supposed to do, and that's to buckle or drop. That's how hard this guy hit. Okay, it shocked people so much that the brain had to compute what the hell just happened. And so you're right. That's the power of that you can't explain. And then you have guys like, Howard Davis or Ray Leonard, with this unbelievable speed. Where the hell does that come? Or Roy Jones, where the hell does that come from? That you can train 24 hours a day. You're never going to have that. And those guys had it. So I think every great athlete in every sport just sees something or has something that's just that much better than everything else. They used to say about Wayne Gretzky, he saw everything happening in slow motion on the ice. Like it was, the speed was reduced. And so he looked like he wasn't even trying. Mario Lemieux, same thing. And there's just something about great athletes that make them see things just a little bit different and are that much better than everybody else.
It's clear to Lee and I and everybody watching this and anybody that knows you, how much passion you still have for the sport. A sport that in this country is in trouble. In the United States of America, boxing's, in my opinion, in heaps of trouble. And with that, Lee, you can ask those final few questions that I was going to ask, and I'll probably counter with something.
Yeah, I mean, how do you perceive the state of boxing? And if you had the power to fix what's wrong with this sport, what would you do?
Wow. I think boxing reflects the state of society today. I think it's a big reflection of what we're seeing in life. It used to be a time when you had to have accomplished something to define greatness, to be known, to get a job at a television station, at a radio station. You had to have accomplished something to get the recognition. Now you don't. Now we have a lot of sizzle and no steak. And I think this is the same in the world. I don't think it's just boxing. Boxing is just a reflection of that. If you're comparing now of what's wrong with boxing compared to the boxing that our generation knew of, it's not even the same sport anymore. So they've redefined the sport, and based on what's happening now with the new promoters coming up and the rules and the amendment to the Ali Act and all that, that's just redefining what the sport is going to be. The fact that athletic commissions, want to sanction an exhibition fight where we don't really need you if it's an exhibition. That's not your mandate to oversee exhibition fights between a guy there's going to be, 40 or 60 pounds difference between the two of you, that would never be accepted in a regular fight. If you held a fight in New York and an opponent came in 20 pounds, 10 pounds heavier than the opponent, the commissioner would say, no, can't have that. And now we're turning around sanctioning it under the guise of it's an exhibition, whatever that means.
Right.
It's not a charity event where everyone's having a good time. They're saying they want to knock everybody out and then say, we're going to do 12-ounce gloves. As a manufacturer, I can tell you right now that whether it's a 8, 10, or 12-ounce glove, the thickness of the padding pretty much remains the same. So what's your point? It's a little heavier? Like, I don't get it. And if that's the case, why are you punishing the smaller guy in wearing that? Why isn't the bigger guy wearing 12 and the smaller guy wearing 8s? Why? So that said, that boxing as we know it, I think is never going to come back to what it was. I think it's become now a sport for the affluent. It's no longer, amateur boxing will still be a sport for kids and people from, low income families and stuff. But even the pro game is not that anymore. Even the guys who make it, it's all about making the big money. They call it the bag, apparently. That's the latest word for making money, is the bag. And they don't need to defend their title 4 times a year. Go look at how many times Danny Little Red Lopez defended his title as a span of 2 years. Defended it like 8 times and was in championship fights, I think 10. Salvador Sanchez, the same thing. Guys
Yes.
don't do that today. They don't do that because they make the big money, which I guess, okay, but it's become a sport for the affluent.
Are
And
you concerned about what they're trying to do with the Ali Act?
I am.
And
I am.
why?
Because I would have felt a lot more comfortable if somebody would have come along and say, this Ali Act, this is bad for this reason, this is bad for that. We need to help change this to make it better for the fighters. This is wrong about the Ali Act. But now you're asking to implement 6 or 7 criteria, I believe, that if you fulfill that part of the criteria, makes you exempt from the legality of the Ali Act. So let's have a law, but we're going to give you 7 exemptions that allow you to circumvent that law.
Right.
That to me just says that's a like red flag. Like, it's not, we're gonna amend it to make it even better. We're amending it to circumvent it. That's to me just
certain people make more money.
maybe whatever it is. It just doesn't necessarily say that it's for the better. I don't know what the final intention is or why. We can all assume that it's because of this. They make their own rules, their own rankings, their own league, which I think is becoming of the sporting world. Because if we use mixed martial arts an example, for all intent and purposes, gentlemen, mixed martial arts doesn't really exist. UFC exists, but mixed martial art doesn't really exist. There's not this massive fan base for mixed martial arts. Whereas for boxing, there is. Whether it's the WBA belt, the WBC belt, the IBF belt, there is a fan base for boxing as we know it. Now it's trying to become a monopoly. And I think, boxing, for all it's good or worse, is the last bastion of free enterprise in sports in the world. Everything else is a league. NHL, NBA, it's all a league. If you're not part of that, you can't play, and it's almost incestuous as well that the coaches get fired from one team and get hired by another. Mm-hmm. Wait a minute, you just got fired for a bad job, and then you get hired for to do the job with another team. Boxing doesn't have that, and I'm afraid that that's what it's going to become. Will it affect our life as in our age? I don't know, but it's going to be a different sport. And as we pass on and time goes on, people aren't going to remember what it was like when boxing, when we were in it, and to what it's going to become. The same way that now they look at the generation today looks at somebody like Marvin Hagler and says, what, he lost 5 fights and he only had 1 title?
Yeah.
That's the way they look at it, right? Because now you've got to be world champion in 7 different weight categories, right? And you have to be undefeated to do anything. And that's the way fighters progress now.
One thing people can do to learn and appreciate the history is read. And speaking of reading, they tell me there's a new book coming out, something to do with this Russ Anber guy. Tell us about the book.
Listen, I'm really excited about doing this because, I was fortunate enough to start at such an early age in my coaching career. And so I decided I want to do something which basically is, a summation of my fighters, my fights, and my boxing life. And that's going to be the essence of it. The people I've had the fortune of working with, the good people I've met in the game, the fun that I've had, the anecdotes, the great moments in sport that I've had to experience. I remember standing on the apron at Madison Square Garden when Callum Smith fought, which was on the undercard of Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz. Mm-hmm. And Paul Smith was standing beside me. And I've known the Smiths for so long. I love them, such a great family. And I said to Paul, do you realize this is where Angelo Dundee stood when Ali fought Fraser? And I think about stupid stuff like that, right? So that kind of stuff means a lot to me. And I wanted to write this book. And the guy who's writing the book for me came up with the title, and it's called Russ Anber Unrivaled.
And we're looking at the cover as we speak. When will this book be released?
We're shooting for a spring 2026 deadline. Now, it could be early spring, could be late spring. That's going to depend on the editors and the publishers. And the other important thing is that I've got to make sure that we get the book translated into French as well, because I don't want to do an English release without releasing one at the same time in French for an audience where I likely might sell more books in Quebec alone more than anywhere else. So I want to make sure, out of respect for the place where I started my career and, you know, where I'm likely going to end my career, doesn't have it in French as well. So I want to make sure we do that. So yeah,
I
I'm
like
excited
the
about it.
timing. I like the timing of that, Lee, because you and I are certainly been fans of. I think Russ belongs in Canastota at the
Yes.
International Boxing Hall of Fame. I know he's on the ballot, and my prayers are that he will get in very soon. It'd be great to have you there. Get inducted. You have the book. You get to eat some hummus and some kibbe with Smitty. Do they have that in Canastota? They got a lot of Italian food there. I don't know if they have any Lebanese food. We might have
Lebanese everywhere, bro. Don't worry. We'll find
we might have to. Final question then. How does what I mentioned that you are a Swiss Army knife. What's left? What do you want to? What's left to do, Russ? Other than this book?
what's left to do. Well, a speech at the Hall of Fame would be nice. That would be
Okay.
nice because I want to recognize the greats that I am now going to be a part of. I really want to say how much I love these people and the respect that I have for them. And that means a lot to me to say that because boxing has been my entire life, and I'm so proud to have been part of a group that I dreamed about. You know, like like I told you the story before about saying I stood where Angelo Dundee stood, and then I thought about when Usyk fought Fury and became undisputed champion, and I remember thinking as a kid, you know, that Ali was godlike. You know, Ali and Fraser were godlike, the heavyweight championship of the world, and there's only 4 of us in the corner, and I'm one of them. Like, that's not bad, right? You know, for a little guy from a small town 50 miles north of Montreal, that's not bad, you know? And I thought, this is great. And I want to have a chance to just show my appreciation and my love for the people that came before me and the sport and the groundwork that they laid out that I was able to follow in. That means a lot. So that, in what I'd like to do, I would really like to do that, let people know how much I appreciate the sport of boxing. But for boxing itself, I really enjoy what I'm doing now, working with fighters on both a semi-coaching basis, as a cut man, corner man, hand wrapper. I love doing the boxing stuff that I'm doing. My wife keeps asking me when I'm going to retire, and I told her that I've been retired since the age of 18. I haven't worked a day of my life since then. So I hope I can keep that going. Maybe one day do some promotion and stuff. I would like to do that. I'd like to work with some athletic commissions as well. I see a lot of stuff in the dressing room and officials and the things they say to people and what they're looking for. And sometimes I feel you guys are looking at all the wrong things. You know, you're worried about the wrong things and not taking care of the right things. So maybe I'd like to do something like that. But Smitty, I don't see myself doing anything, you know, outside of boxing, as much as I love and want to play pool for the rest of my life, because I'm a Q sport junkie. I love Q sports as much as I love boxing. So boxing allows me to do that, and I'm happy about that. So as long as I can keep doing what I'm doing, I'm happy, brother.
Well, when it comes to doing it and doing so much of it, as I mentioned that analogy, the Swiss Army knife, and at such a high level and always with grace and dignity and intelligence, nobody really has done it better. And if you people out there, I host the Hall of Fame. I know some of the people who are involved in voting. Certainly you are a guy that absolutely unequivocally needs to be there in Canastota as an inductee. And I thank you for taking the time out of a busy schedule to hang out with us a little bit on In This Corner.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate the kind words from you guys. I know you do that because I go to the events, Smitty. I see you do that. I love to be around those guys, and I really appreciate the kind words. It's just to be nominated, you know, is really an honor. But I can't let you go because you opened this door about Lee going to an officials clinic. So I'm going to ask you guys a question now. What do you guys think about scoring an even round?
Well, I do score even rounds myself, and I get criticized. In fact, that was the bulk of why everybody criticized me last year, because they all said there's no such thing as an even round. And I said, well, you know, a game can be 10-10, a game can be 17-17. What do you mean if there's nothing to decipher from? And they told me you can't do it. And guess what? I still score even rounds to this day. But Lee,
Yeah.
Well, I rarely score 10-10 rounds, but ironically, at the clinic, they showed a round and I scored it even. So nothing happened. So if nothing
Exactly.
happens, then how else can you score it?
Or everything happens, or they're going toe to toe, and you have no reason to give it. And I'll prove to you right now in one sentence as to why even rounds should exist. First of all, you have to have competency, and you can't use an even round just to get out of something. Okay, let's establish that, because I'd like to think that you have the intelligence to determine an even round more than just a scapegoat round. Okay, we agree on that. I'll prove to you right now in one sentence that even rounds exist in boxing. You've all heard this. Oh, that round could have gone either way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Either way. That means it's even.
He's even. Yeah.
It could have gone either way. It's even. You can't
It's-
say you could give it to one or the other. And that round that could have gone either way is the difference in winning or losing a fight. That's insane. That's insane.
All right.
So-
And on that note, we're coming back one more time for Lee to talk about all the insanity and stuff that he heard about with Steve Weisfeld. Want to thank Russ Anber. We'll be back.
I got two options. Option one, I can accept defeat. Option two, I can get up. I can get tougher. I can get faster. I can get stronger. And then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
All right, back. Final segment in this corner of the podcast. Great stuff with Russ Anber. They just really enjoy those kind of shows with Steve Albert and Thomas Hauser and Russ Anber. Great minds, great stories. Okay,
Yes.
Steve Weisfeld has been on the program before, one of the best judges ever. And you were at a seminar somewhere east, northeast, or west of Friendly. I don't know where, but take us through that journey and what you gathered from it.
Well, last weekend I went to Sutton, West Virginia.
Where the hell is that at?
It's a bit south of here. I had to drive 2.5 hours of winding roads, back roads in West Virginia. I think Formula One
Just
would
don't
be
make
very
a wrong
proud.
turn, but go ahead.
Oh, geez, yes. But I attended a clinic that was designed to train boxing judges, and it was conducted by Steve Weisfeld, who is considered one of the best going right now. In fact, he's on the Hall of Fame ballot this year for the first time, and I'm sure he's going to get his share of votes. But he started the clinic by asking, what are the two primary goals in boxing? And I'm asking the question to you. What are the two primary objectives in boxing?
You mean with scoring a fight?
Just in general.
Well, for me, it would be hit and not get hit.
Okay. Well, he answered the question by saying landing punches, and in the act of landing punches, inflicting as much damage as possible to get to the ultimate objective, which is victory, preferably by knockout, but showing superiority over your opponent. And that was sort of the vein that I got throughout this clinic. We all grew up memorizing the 4 criteria of judging: clean punching, effective aggressiveness, ring generalship, and defense. Now, apparently the ABC has rewritten the rules last year. They modified it, and now the two main drivers are clean hard punching and effective aggression, while the other two phases are considered secondary. Ring generalship, the term, is now considered passé, and now the new term is control, which kind of is a simpler way of saying ring generalship, who has control over the other fighter. And defense is off the other secondary judging factor. This pretty much lined up with what was said during the judges ringside lecture that you conducted during
Right,
this
right.
year's Hall of Fame weekend. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, they're
You
getting
know?
away from they're seemingly getting away from what makes the sweet science sweet. The
Yeah.
guile and the craft and all the stuff that we try to explain when I do my in-ring segments and things I've learned over the years just in working out and that why I wasn't a great pugilist when I had my little brief career, because at a high level there are so many intricacies that make it such a special craft when it's applied correctly. I don't mind changes and the verbiage, but hell, if you're going to say ring generalship is control, well, control, that's a big word. If you're controlling the other guy, whether you knock his ass out or whether you decision him, you're controlling him.
Mhm.
I just kind of, and I love change from time to time, and at least looking at it. But are they trying to mitigate it?
I think that, well, one way to sort of describe this is how they're going to handle 10-8 rounds. The way they see it, about 95% of all rounds with a knockdown will be scored 10-8. And the only way that a downed fighter can get back to 10-9 is if the knockdown that he suffers is a flash knockdown. And after he gets up during the course of the round, he has to dominate the rest of the round and also clearly hurt his opponent, the one who just knocked him down. He has to hurt his opponent while winning the round. That standard makes it very hard for a 10-9 round to happen with a knockdown. And,
Right.
and I think that is kind of the intent. They want judges to stay in the 10-8 lane as much as possible. It has to be an
Which
extraordinary
means they're
circumstance.
banking so much and pushing so much on. I love power, but they're pushing so much on power over the craft, and I think it can be. There's different ways of doing it. Because there could be a flash knockdown. It could be a balance shot.
Mhm.
It could be that the one fighter's hit at that special part, an equilibrium shot. But by and large, I don't think that's as big of a deal or something that I see as egregiously as not scoring ring generalship and or defense. I think those are the two lost arts. I know it. I know you learned a few things too about 10-8s and 10-9s,
Mhm.
and did
Mhm.
they talk at all about something Russ spoke about, was even rounds? Did they get into that at all?
They said that it's discouraged,
Yeah.
and it actually, as I mentioned before, there was one round in which virtually nothing happened, and they wanted us to score the round. I said I scored it even because
And what was
nothing
the
happened.
response that they gave you to that?
It's encouraged that you have to pick a winner. No, pretty much no matter what. 10-10 rounds are very much discouraged.
Yeah, and I again, I'm loud with that, and we just heard somebody like Russ, so and I don't know if adding more points, having it a 15-point system or a 5-point system, which Randy Gordon. I just think common sense, and again, Steve's one of the best. He doesn't make too many mistakes. He's been around it.
No,
He gets it. And it's so good that they do these seminars. But, a lot of these judges, they don't know what ring generalship even is. They're of the mindset, yeah, go in there and knock it, whatever. And not subtleties and movement and slipping a shot and missing a shot to land a shot. I mean, that's what makes this sport so great, are all of those things. And I think that's why guys like Russ and myself, appreciate those things. He is it works the corner of Usyk and Lomachenko. I think those two know more about ring generalship than all the judges in the history put together. And they're neither one of those are really big punchers. They can punch, but it's their craft that has made them all-time great. So I think the seminars are great. I think talking about it all is great. Maybe figuring out different things with numbers, but at the end of the day, I actually think boxing got it right in the beginning with clean, hard punching. Yeah, that's about as important as it can get. Aggression, who's coming forward, ring generalship.
But are they effective?
Yeah, effective. Obviously, it has to be effective. That's really important, right? Ring generalship,
Yes.
and then, of course, defense. And we have seen some people like Floyd Mayweather's and Sweet Pea Whitaker's who were that combination of, their defense and ring generalship blended together to make them all-time great. So, what did you really come away with then?
Well, another part of the seminar was that he had us judge videos of about 15 rounds with various scenarios. And he asked us not only to give our scores, but also explain why we scored the way we did. He then would reveal how the real judges scored the rounds and how those rounds were scored at other seminars. It lasted about 3.5 hours. The time just flew by, and
were the
really,
scores all over the place, or was there some semblance of that most people had it around the same, or were they all over the place? That's what fans
it was.
would do.
It was various scenarios. One of them was one in which one fighter pretty much obviously won the round, but the actual official scored a 2-1 for the other guy. That kind of thing. There are others in which there was near unanimity. And then there were ones that were really split 50-50. And those are the nuanced ones that really that really challenge you. I think that fans would be well advised to attend some of these seminars, not only to increase their knowledge, but to get a taste of how challenging the job really is. We can watch on TV, we can drink our beer and talk with our friends while the fight is going on. But real judging, as Steve said on our show, requires 100% concentration, 100% knowledge of what you're looking at.
Let me ask this: do these? I wonder if it would be a good thing for these seminars to be, available online, whether you pay for them or get them for free, however they want to do it is fine. But I mean, so that fans could watch something like that, that can't necessarily
I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah. And then they might get a real understanding. Listen, part of the beauty of boxing, I hate to say this, but part of the beauty is, he got it right. Oh, no, he won. No, you're crazy. What are you talking about? Jones won that. No, Smith won that. Right? No, the subjectivity is part of the beauty, and there is no absolute look. As much as I claim these eyes, are amongst the best in boxing, I've gotten it so wrong before, watching and not be where I was sitting, not paying attention, talking to other. I've gotten it wrong. Maybe even younger, when I was a younger guy. Maybe going in too much with a mindset of what I thought I was going to see as compared to what I actually saw. So I think those are great, but I think this subjectivity is part of the beauty. And, when it's that close and there's so much whatever, that's where the word rematch comes in,
Right.
Just fight again. But yeah, I think it's a great thing. Steve, no doubt, is one of the best. You're one of the best. Russ Amber's one of the best. I don't know what the hell I am. We're gonna get out of here. Want to thank Russ Anber for joining us in this corner, the podcast. $173. Very good. So long, everybody.